here. We're excited for tonight. Tonight is a member video review, which is a regular on the office hours programming now because it's a fan favorite, which I can see why. It's a pretty cool opportunity to get your specific horse and riding looked at by some of our Ride IQ coaches. And today we're here with Kyle and Jen Carter, the OG Ride IQers. I'm sure I always assume that everyone who's here with us on office hours is here with us every week. So I just jump right in. But just in case someone's listening or someone's here who hasn't been to office hours before, the way this works is it's an hour of live Q&A with our guest experts today. Generally, it's one. We're lucky today because we have two. And you are welcome to chat or ask questions via the chat feature if you're here live. If you're not here live, we still appreciate you and we're glad that you are tuning in. For the members' video reviews, the way that it works is members have sent us videos of their horse and them ahead of time, and we'll take a look at those clips together and then we'll read what the members shared. So they provided some background information, they asked a question, and Kyle and Jen will provide feedback and suggestions. And it's just a great way to kind of get your exact situation looked at by a pro. It's a really cool opportunity. So if it's something you're interested in, just keep your eye out because we try to do these every 6 weeks or so. But with that, Kyle and Jen, thanks for being here and being the brains behind this operation.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm not sure that us being the brains is any sort of testament what's going on here, but we'll give it a go.
Right. We've done our best. All right. So Kinsey, you have the videos. I'll let you either jump into those, or I know I usually do like the table setting check-in stuff. I don't know if you want to do that or if you just want to jump in, but I'll let you decide.
Let's jump right in because I don't want to run out of time to not see some of these videos. So we're going to start with Caitlin tonight, and I'm going to put her up on the screen, but if we need, and I'm going to ask you guys the question while you're watching it, but we can always rewatch it if necessary. So let's see Caitlin's video. So Caitlin is saying she's looking for mostly general feedback. She says maybe any advice on how to prevent my lovely chicken wings that seem to happen over the jump and how to help my horse not land on a heap on the backside.
Do we have a backstory on the horse, what he is or anything?
We did not receive a backstory on the horse, but Caitlin, if you're here, feel free to provide some backstory. Otherwise, he's 100% beautiful.
He's really cute.
Does that really look like he lands in a heap?
I think the thing is, let's just go and start that at the beginning again. But right there, if you just pause, he like when he canters, I don't know how old he is, like that sort of, it does help. Breed helps, that sort of stuff, size. He looks obviously like a cob. I don't know what, Welsh or, who knows, but we'll find out, I guess, hopefully. But the thing is that he kind of canters with his hind leg out behind and pushes himself into the ground a little bit anyways. So that's probably a little bit what you're feeling when he's getting to the jump, because he actually lifts his wither pretty well when you get actually to the fence. But as he canters, I would probably, to sort of start the setup, I would work some canter pulls on a circle with him that were just a little bit off the ground to force him to just bring his hind leg a little bit cleaner underneath and make your job a bit easier. You can see that left hind or outside hind sort of pushes upwards rather than forwards. And so that's going to push you more forward up his neck when he jumps, because he isn't lifting and through probably as much as he should be. The other thing I would study to work on is where you get to the jump. I know the idea that horses are supposed to pick their, find the distance for the rider, but he's a little bit further off the fence at all those than you would, certainly in the last three, than you would necessarily want, because you want the height of the jump to be the distance. And so as he leaves that little bit longer, if you think about it, it's much harder for a horse to maintain its power that goes up and through if they're leaving from that longer distance. So what he's probably doing is what you're feeling, I think, is most likely him pushing from the earlier spot and then kind of landing into the ground. So the jump isn't assisting his canter, it's diminishing his canter, and that takes him to a few more steps on the backside to recover. So, a set of bounce exercises might help that, make him just a little bit quicker with his feet, so that you're able to sort of stay over top of the middle of him. If you think about the horse as that what you're trying to ride is a ball of energy that should be located somewhere underneath you. His ball of energy is probably just a little bit out, in front of you. And so he's pushing, and as he pushes, he's almost playing catch up to that energy. And so what you need to do is take that, what the energy ball is the center of gravity, and we need to relocate it further back down his rib cage, closer to his hind end. And so that when he canters, he, flexes his hips a little bit more and comes underneath himself more. So his landing, when his front end is landing in the canter stride, which, in a jump the jump is a canter stride, as he's landing, his front feet aren't catching the energy. They're simply being placed into the ground, and he's lowering into it. And that, type of horse, the way that he's built, it's going to take a little bit of work to sort of recalibrate that. What I would think is that you probably, like I said, the bounces will help him with the quickness of his feet. Canter pulls on a circle will help with that throughness a little bit. They're a little bit off the ground, they should be sort of, I know there is something on Ride IQ with it, but like a 9-foot width in the center. And because it's set like a fan, where's the screen? There it is. Because it's set like a fan on the outside, it'd probably be more like 10.5 feet. And on the inside, it's probably more like, I don't know if I'd go that small. I'd probably have it like, 6, because you're cantering, you're not trotting. So then if you fell in, it's still a doable canter. And you just kind of do that. You just go start in the center, you move him in a little bit, you move him out a little bit. And every time he lands, because when his front end has hit the ground, it actually has to be leaving before the hind leg lands. So he starts to actually have to bring himself back. So he comes up off the ground slightly earlier when he's cantering. And so then again, we're just taking it, and we're taking all that power, and we're transferring it from the front end of the horse to the back end of the horse. If I had a Breyer horse here, I could sort of show that a little bit better maybe, but my kids they haven't cleaned up. There's a Breyer horse here.
Just disregard the front leg.
If you break the front leg, they really will pick up their front end. But so as the horse comes, where are you? As the horse lands or comes up off the ground, this inside hind demonstrates sort of where you want the hind leg, and his inside hind's pretty good, but your outside hind basically on him is sort of there. And what you needed to do is go more and hinge underneath, like where this horse is, so that when he comes down in front, he lands lighter. So you don't feel like you're being pummeled into the ground. But that said, he's not, it probably feels worse than it looks. But what's happening is your energy ceasing on the front end because it's kind of being driven into the ground, and we need it to just to come off the ground just a little bit earlier.
About a jump with rails on it to get him to come back up around it more.
Yeah, like
a
vertical with arrowhead rails on it would help kind of lift him. So you go and describe your.
Yeah, Jen, we didn't hear what you just said. By
the
way,
I said maybe a vertical with some rails as a point on top of it, so it kind of forces him to have to come back around it more and sit a little more for the jump. And you can start with them wider, and as the horse gets more comfortable with it, you can push the arrow point in together closer.
And so that would be you'd set your vertical, and you'd place your rails on top of the vertical. And at the base of the rails, which would be the furthest from the vertical, they'd be set, if these are the rails, they'd be set out like that. So I'd say probably about 10 feet, 9 feet wide. I wouldn't go much narrower than that probably to begin with. And then on the top of the rail, start them probably 3 feet wide, and then bring them in closer together until finally you're jumping an arrowhead point with the rails on the vertical. I would suggest, though, with a horse that leaves a little bit long like he likes to, I probably put and I'm not a big 9-foot rail person, but with him, I'd probably put a 9-foot rail in that situation so that he had to actually do the thing that I'm not a fan of with them. It's just they kind of want to dive a little bit over them. But with him, it would make him then have to be a little quicker back to you. And that's all you really need is you need him to hit the ground when he lands on the backside and transfer his weight quicker so you don't feel all that energy. It's like a basketball versus a bowling ball. So you're the same arc. The basketball hits the ground and bounces, and the bowling ball hits the ground and all the energy just hits the ground. And I think that's what you're feeling a little bit. So I think that you would want a 9-foot rail in that case to help him change how his balance is when he's landing, more than so much thinking what's going on in front, other than getting the distance set closer. This, anybody that listens to this is going to probably be like, well, Kyle wouldn't know about elbows going out because I never have that issue.
That comment was made.
Yeah, but the elbows going out are typically related to the reins getting too long. So for me, I always end up at the fences like water and that sort of thing where I want to get behind them. I end up slipping the rein. I don't need to. My arms are bloody long, but for some reason it's just ingrained in me now, probably from riding horses that might drop behind me and get behind my leg. And so I'll slip the reins. And because I want to keep the connection with the mouth, you can't really physically bring your elbow back and keep the connection when the rein gets too long. So the little bit I'm seeing with your elbow as you're going over the jump where they're getting just a bit wide, my suggestion would be to shorten the reins. And actually then, can we just reloop that video for a second? I just want to see something about the release, because I feel like that also happens more when the hand presses into the neck. And as a good state of balance, like your heel's super. I think like right there, when you look at it, your elbow's a bit stiff. And so I would let your elbow be softer in the canter. And then if you look, if you go, can you reverse that and just plant it over top of the jump? Just a still picture. Get the tech department on that. So like right there, you see how your hand is planted in the neck? Your hand can't go forward because you're pushing so hard into the neck. And so what you want to do is do a little bit more releasing towards the bit there, because your horse will appreciate it more because his neck can come down more, enhancing his ability to land in a better balance. But like right now, if you put your elbows in, you're going to feel yourself really uncomfortable. You're going to drill your rib cage with your elbows because your hand's planted. And what you have to do is you need to bring your hand forward in that crest release and follow his mouth more. But to help with that, what I would do is I'd approach the fence and try to canter your jumps with your hands like, 1.5 foot wide. So they're not on the neck and you're just holding them out. And it'll force you to stay down to your leg a bit more in the air, which, your legs come back a little bit there in the air where it was quite good in the canter. I think you need to bring your hips back a little bit. That'll help alleviate some of that feeling of pressure on the backside. But if you jump the fence and do not touch his neck and keep your hands wide, it'll force you to stay more stable over top of him. And you're going to find yourself way more elastic through the air with him. And it'll force you to it'll force you a better balance so that then you feel more comfortable just letting the hand go more towards the mouth. But if you look at it in your ride and if you let the video go on just a little bit further, I'm pretty sure we'll see the same act at most of it. And so you're thinking crest release and you're limiting where your hand goes. You got to crest release forward, not downwards into the neck. and that's definitely going to limit his ability to limit your ability, to not let your elbow go out. Right? Does that, I mean, I hope that all makes sense to you. And it's easy. It's easy. It's an easy fix. I bet you if you just take your hand off after a few jumps, you're going to find yourself having to find a new balance, and that balance then will come from your leg rather than your hand pushing into the neck for your balance. And I don't, look, I actually don't have a problem with the hand going into the neck to support yourself. I think is a pretty commonly encouraged situation in a position, but make sure it goes forward enough that your elbow stays, like in front of your rib cage. The grids are really good for practicing that because you can just kind of come through the grid. That's why people love grids as coaches. Is it's a bit mindless in the teaching. You just kind of trot them down there, and then you just, all you got to do is focus on what you're doing. It's a bit like a lunge lesson for sitting trot. The lunge lesson's easier on the rider because they only have to focus on one thing. And if you're coaching it, you only focus on one thing as well, where the coaching a seat and trying to teach someone how to do like a shoulder in, it's a lot of processing that's not possible. So try to isolate your place there. The one other thing I think is really good for creating that elasticity through your joints is mound work. So we've got mounds set up all around here. I don't know, your facility looks quite nice, but I don't know what they've got for actual short hills. Natural ditches on the side of the road will do it too, where your driveways show up if you're up north, where they've got snow and they've got proper ditches. When you get to the driveway from the bottom of the ditch to the top of the road, cross the road, and then back down the other side, that's a similar sort of shape that I would want to practice that on, and practice just staying still with your body in relation to gravity, but let your horse move up to you and drop away from you, and do that with your hands out in front of you, and then practice, reaching forward. Now, the reaching forward part, if you're really trying to get good at that, you might put a braid in his neck further up and just try to practice reaching for that braid, or a piece of tape on their mane or something, because you've got an objective. And I think one of the biggest mistakes I see in riding is when people are like, oh, you need to go more forward, or you need to reach more forward, but it's not clear enough. You need a specific to make a change. You want to say, I am going to reach to here. And then once you've done that like 5 to 10 times, usually 10, your body will start to be okay reaching. And maybe it won't reach as far without you thinking about it, but you'll have already encouraged yourself to reach past that point. And the whole time you're practicing that, think that when you bring your hand forward, you want almost to think your elbows are going to come and touch in front of you. They're not going to, unless you have really good rotator cuffs. But you can just kind of think of your elbows wanting to touch, and that will also keep your seat back a little bit more.
Wow, that was incredibly helpful. I love that. Like, I feel like I learned a lot during that. So I hope Caitlin feels the same way, but I want her to submit another video for the next one so we can see an update. Perfect. Well, the next person is Sarah, and
Same thing. Inhale.
muting that one. Sarah is saying, based on the video, what would you fix about my equitation over fences? What do you think about my leg, hip angle, and release?
Our screen is just really small.
Can we see it one more time?
I think you're perfect.
There's not a lot to change there.
Well, so first of all, I will say it's easier when it's cantering to find the position, I think. And if we could go back and just freeze it over top of the oxer. So like right there, your stirrup, which was at the girth, is now behind the girth.
Right.
I think you need to think of opening your knee a little bit more so that if you open your knee, hit your, so right now over top of the jump, and this is something I very much struggle with, is you're actually crouching down over the show jump. And I think what you want to think is, if you pull up a video or pictures of Eric Lamaze is an incredible example of it. BZ Madden, incredible example of it. You'll see their knee angle. I'm sort of trying to find their knee is actually quite open over top of the jump. So if this is the lower leg, this is the knee where my hand is. Oh God. So when they jump, they actually, I can't do it because I can't. Okay, I'll do it just looking at it because I keep trying to do it on the screen. Okay. So if this is the angle, when they jump, they actually lift their knee backwards, and that then keeps their hip further up out of the saddle, but it forces that leg forward. So it's, if we are talking about an equitation seat here, you need to be less roached in the back. You can see your shoulders are a little bit rounded and your lower back is just a little bit roached. I mean, again, this would be because you're asking about equitation position there. That leg wants to come more forward. Your back wants more of an arch in it. So what I tell people with the arch in the back is you want to visualize that, like, what kind of arch do you want? Well, the gymnasts that I've coached that come into horses usually have this incredible arch in their back, and it's too much, and you can't actually absorb energy through it. So you don't want so much arch that's like a gymnast where their rib cage is like really pronounced forward at the base of the ribs. The lowest ribs are like way out in front of them. But what you want to do is visualize the position that people take in beauty pageants in the bikini part of the competition, where they really arch their back, but they arch and they go straight up. You'll see it also in muscle build, natural, what is it? Bodybuilding. Yeah, bodybuilding, where, and not just in the women, but in the men, they open their rib cage up, but they don't over pronounce the arch. So yours is, again, there in your back, and you want to have it, like there. So when you jump, your position would be there. Now your shoulder, which is the front here, is up more, and then your back is, flat. But to look flat, it wants to actually hold an arch, and then and then you want to bring your hips up to help with that. If you think your shoulder stays where it is, your knee straightens and your leg kind of reaches your toe pushing towards the shoulder, and you open your knee, that will lift your hips. As soon as that happens, your back has to become flatter anyways. So you're jumping, kind of holding yourself into the horse, and what you want to do is open away from the horse a little bit more. I like your release. I would say the one thing you want to look at in the release, and it's not like, I like the crest release. I love where your elbow is. Most of the time, that lower leg can really be sorted by lifting the person's chin, but your chin is really good. And so it's interesting that your chin, you might even, to practice it, put your chin up more, not because there's anything wrong with what you're doing, but you will see when people really lift their chin, their whole base of support will come forward often. But I think you're going to have to actually think about kicking your leg forward, because it looks to me like you're driving to get him, to get the power in the jump. And that as well, because you came in the trot and they're building the canter, you're trying to get the horse to move forward. And because of that, I think your leg is coming and pushing against his rib cage. And that's, typically, like I said, is like, I would say your posture there is something I would struggle with in the show jumping. And it's because I try to do too much to help them, and then I try to help them up in the air. But I think what you have to do is relax your hips, relax the inner part of your thigh, so your knees almost open away from the saddle, and then sink down. Your heel's good, but sink down with your toe. Would you really think about pushing the toe towards towards the bit on the horse. I said shoulder, which is the same thing, but if you really think of kicking that toe towards the bit, you will automatically create that leg to stay where you want it to. And the goal being the stirrup bar, the stirrup leather should lay straight down towards the girth. So if you're when you're looking at these pictures, you want to see that stirrup, in place right by the girth. And I mean, honestly, we got pictures all over the walls in here. Mine are usually, if I'm going over a corner, I have a very good lower leg over corners. The rest of it is a bit shoddy. Jen's pictures, she sits right over top of her leg very well. And I think she took her position a lot more seriously when she was riding than I did. I always just wanted to ride horses. So it's a struggle once you get to, when you don't do it when you're like a teenager, especially early teens, because now you're trying to reform muscle memory. And that's why I also would probably work this at a canter. I'd probably canter in over a small vertical and then have 2 or 3 jumps that every time you leave the ground, you can think leg goes forward, because the more times you do it, the more that will become natural. Banks up are not going to help with this at all. Banks down will help somewhat, but you're just going to want to work this on repetition of single show jumps like this would be very good. And like I said, it's typically, like I said in the last one, I would work position over mounds. And the reason I do that is that the mound represents the bascule that a horse would take over a jump, not in their body, because they're not obviously tucked, but in where their back is. So as you go up the mound, over the top of the mound, and down the mound, the horse's back mirrors where it would be over top of a jump without the shape that you would get over top of a jump. Can we go back one more time? I just want to make sure that, because the equitation stuff, I'm not really like, I
The
tend to
same
not
thing.
do
Inhale.
and I would inhale. I definitely would exhale after I inhaled. Yeah, I think you need to maybe be a little softer in your hip too. So when you jump, your hip comes back. That'll help keep your leg in front. If you watch, it goes a little bit towards the pommel. And that's why I wanted to see that, because that's a common connection of problems.
And I would say you just look like over the oxer, you want to push your shoulders a little quick off the base. Try and keep your shoulders a little quieter and let him come up to you so then you don't get left behind.
Now, I'm going to just caveat all that. There was a lot of information, a lot of picking away, but honestly, I think the horse looks like he needs a bit more energy. He looks a nice type. A little more energy will make the job easier. And these are little subtle things that you're going to have to work on, but I wouldn't look at that and be like, oh my God, this girl needs to really, get on this. Except if you really want to have an exceptional position, you have to work on it. I said Beezy Madden and Eric. The reason I picked them is just because you can see what I'm talking about in the leg with them. When they're over top of their fence, their leg is very open and their hips are very much flat. McLean doesn't go quite as high up out of the saddle, so it's visually not as much. But if you're looking for what the ideal, I think I'm a big visual learner. I'm a big believer in seeing it and kind of getting it in there. I'm a mimicker. I can pick someone's position and follow it. I wish I probably should do that more often with good positions, but I usually mock people that are doing it worse than me. There's not that many. So, but if you look at Will Coleman over top of a jump, his leg is draped around the rib cage of the horse. He's not driving them over the fence. But that comes from having the energy and the correctness of it. If you watch Leslie Lago over a jump, his horses, he doesn't drive them over the jump either, but he struggles with that same description I was saying about the leg coming back and the body going forward. Leslie's equitation might not be ideal, but he does so many other things right, including the allowing the horse to find its way off the ground, and his way of letting the horse find its shape. Like, he's so good at not interfering with them, he can afford to actually have those, inconsistencies in position. I struggle with that because I need to be very on that all the time. I tend to, if I get into trouble, will fall back too much because I get very defensive, because it comes a little bit from the horses you ride, and I think your horse needs a little bit of energy. I wouldn't be afraid to kind of give him a tap as you're coming, and then maybe just do like 4 or 5 jumps in a row to help you get that chance and to get him into that better rhythm.
Love it. Yeah, that was all really great advice. Perfect. Well, great job, Sarah. The next one, I'm very excited for. I'm excited for all of these, but so this next one is Anna, and our very favorite, and this is what she calls him, not what we're calling him. She says she would love some advice for the fabulous fat fjord. Olaf has always struggled with lateral movements and particularly shoulder control. Olaf is the king of dropping his shoulder and trying to scoot out of the circle. He used to drop his shoulder and dive out of open gates in fenced areas. He's just a naughty pony like that. We are working on shoulder in and leg yields at the walk and trot to help teach him to listen better to my leg aids. As a draft pony, he often feels sensitivity to aids is optional when he doesn't like the exercise. Do Kyle and Jen have any favorite exercises or ideas to help keep this chubby guy supple and keep expanding his lateral education? Sorry.
I think he's perfect.
I struggled through that one.
He's perfect.
Yeah, I know. He is perfect. He's just fun to watch.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So we're not going to be able to help you. We're just going to sit here and look at your pony.
See how cute he is.
I want one of these. Well, and you don't want to get after him because he's just so damn cute. But I guess we have to give you some sort of advice other than he's super cute. Oh my God. You start.
He brings me so much joy.
Every time I see pictures of him on the, immediately recognize them, but.
Well, my favorite, but again, it might be a struggle from the start, is I like to work them onto a small circle and leg yield them out to a big circle, just kind of over and over to try and get them kind of more responsive to your leg. I find that softens them in the back as much as you can. I'm not sure how much you can do with that back, but that's my favorite go-to. The other thing I love is put him on a wall alongside and just go leg yield over a few strides and then back to the wall a few strides, and try and just do that, in very small increments, like 3 strides over, 3 strides back. And you can do it at all the gates once he gets more comfortable with it all.
Yeah, and so the thing is like, he doesn't have a bad canter, which is usually if the canter is a real struggle, none of that, it doesn't really make any sense. So by the sounds of it, he falls to the outside on the circle. But what Jen's suggesting actually can help, because they want to go from a small circle to a bigger circle. If they're going to leg yield, they're happier leg yielding out away from the middle of the circle. So then what you're doing is you're teaching him to actually leg yield and come away from a leg by using that natural inclination. And I know there's a few rides on that. Lauren Splicer did one. Jen's done one. I think I've done one. I mean, there's a reason there's so many of them. That exercise is seriously helpful. So what I would say is the next stage is probably the important part for you by what you're describing, which is, so leg yield away from the middle of the circle, and then leg yield back towards the middle of the circle, which is going to be a struggle, but that's going to make him have to pay attention to your outside aids, and more importantly, outside leg, to get him moving over. So what Jen was saying about the horse's back, not that he's a bodybuilder, but if you were to take a martial arts expert or a gymnast, they tend to be lighter muscle and incredibly elastic. And if you take a bodybuilder, they tend to be very bulky and not terribly elastic. And there's a reason for that. Bulk inhibits elasticity. It doesn't mean it can't, that one negates the other, but you're going to struggle with that. And you're going to struggle with the core build that he has is quite thick. I mean, yes, he's fluffy is what we'll call it, but he also looks, I mean, for his size, his barrel's quite big. That makes it incredibly hard to be flexible in the back. His neck is thick. That creates, flexibility issues. And with a horse like that, when you take his head to the inside, any little bit of weight falling to the outside, the whole horse is just going to kind of explode out of that, because there's a lot more mass to the amount of carrying muscle that makes him move over. Like right there where he fell over. But it looked to me like when you put that inside leg on, you kind of took the inside rein at the same time, and then he fell away from it. Remember, if you take a rein, their hind leg tends to go the other direction. So I would say that you want to make that outside rein a lot more valuable to you there, and maybe ride him in a counter bend to help with that. And then the driving aid for this horse should always probably be on the side that he falls to, which was, from what you're describing, the outside of the circle. So the leg yielding on the circle and back in would be helpful. I would do it at the walk and the trot. The canter, the leg yield in is going to be really almost impossible because it's actually a half pass coming back in. However, one other thing that can really help with this stuff is one thing you would probably want to do is put 8 rails out there and build a square or a rectangle, but most likely a square. So you have 2 rails at every corner that make the square to sort of help your outside leg and rein. You need maybe a little bit of help with some definition. And then when you're coming to those, ride it as a square rather than a circle. And so you really come out of that turn, and you think that you're riding him from the left, say we're turning right, you're actually riding a square corner, then straight and another square corner. Then you can do it somewhere where there are no rails and just ride a square instead of a circle, because when you come to the end, you're going to do the square on and turn him. He's going to have been straight. And so I do it in a 20-meter area. And when you square that corner up, it's all outside leg and rein, pushing him to the inside rein so that it helps him around that turn. And what you're really doing is creating better shoulder control. Turn on the turn on the haunches can help that. I don't know if he's quite there yet, but he certainly could do sort of the schooling version of it, where the hind leg is able to take a bigger step around. And when you're doing that, again, you're trying to control that shoulder movement from the outside of your horse, just trying to make him more aware that your aid actually means something, not that your aid is there to carry him. Because if you have to carry that horse, you're going to be carrying a lot of horse, and you've got to be very cognitive of that issue. So I definitely would use the square to help with the turn. And I would definitely just think the whole time that you're trying to get the leg on, the aids on, get him to move away from it, and then relax it. Don't carry him. I was reading an article recently. I think it was Frank Chapeau, might have been William Steinkraus. I can't remember. It was one of the show jumpers, and they were just, one of the things in there was saying how it is imperative that once a horse moves forward, that you take all the aids off so that they carry themselves, and that you're not driving them to the point of not listening to you anymore. And horses are masters at training people, and people are not often masters at training horses. So you have to get where your leg comes on, you get the response, and then you must take it off and let him fall apart. and then correct him back to it and then take it off again. I mean, until he finally stays in front of those aids. The leg yield that Jen suggested off the wall and back to the wall is really helpful for just getting them again more aware of that when this leg comes on, the right leg comes on, the pressure goes from right leg into left rein. So you're riding diagonal aids all the time. And then if you do that down the long side of an arena, when you come to the end, you just basically square that turn up like I was describing, where you actually are putting their shoulder around the turn, not bringing their head to the inside around the turn. By taking the head to the inside, all your energy and horse is going to fall to that outside. And that looks a little bit maybe what also is going on. And it's going to be all about getting him to keep that shoulder movement in front of the engine. So, and I'm going to guess he's probably a lot better at figuring out how not to do it than you're going to be right off at figuring out how to do it. And that's understandable. It's his body. He's the one that has to work. And so he's going to be conscious of trying to find a way around it.
Yeah, he is the best.
Adorable. I mean, look, it's also, it's a little bit, but breed specific, horse specific, that's going to be a bigger challenge for that. But it's just that he's got other qualities that are, extra ordinary. So he might be a struggle in this one, but I think those exercises should help you get him to come away from the leg. And then, with horses that are really bad about it, I do groundwork with them where I just sort of make, I hold the rein and I make them move away from you. We usually use bamboo because we grow bamboo, but just any sort of stick. And I just sort of, tap them on the hip or hock and just make them move away. And then I tap them on the shoulder and make them move away. And I do that before I get on them, just so that all the buttons are turned on really gently, just trying to get them to yield from pressure so that pressure doesn't become you carrying him.
By the way, your canter walk was beautiful.
It really was. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Can?
Yeah.
Okay. My mic just gave me an error message, so I want to make sure it was working. Okay. So loved that. Every part of that. Every bit of it. Okay, so the next person is Krista, and let me bring her video up. And Krista's background is, she said, I thought I had a good plan to ride the corner. And in the course walk with Jen Halling, she said, close the door with your right leg and rein. I didn't do that at all. She said to dig right spur in horse and hold right rein tight. I had 2 runouts there. The first surprised me, and the second was me not preparing well and just running at it without a plan. I need feedback on how to ride corners better and also how to regroup if I do have a run out as well. On a side note, this was the best gallop we've ever had on cross country due to running the steeplechase.
Oh, right. So that was at the
Barnstaple.
Okay, well, so just a couple of things with that. Like, your first approach looked all right. I got to say, I think he was a bit cheap on you there. So when you came to it, though, I would have kept the canter just a little bit shorter, which you just did it in a shorter canter that last time. So a horse moving forward is a straight horse. So when you go down center line of dressage, you go forward, because then they go straighter down the center line. When you came to that the first time, you lost a little bit of energy in the turn. And when you approach that jump, you'll see he never really re-engaged and pushed through to your bridle. So he should be taking you like he is there to maintain your line. But if you watch, the little dip on the back side takes some of his canter away, and then the turn, I guess it's the ditch, he's slow there and he backed off on you. And so when you're trying to fix him, you're fixing him from your hand. When you take the hand to get them over top of a jump, it's the least effective thing, because all you end up doing is having the head go to the flag. And what you needed to do was make sure that the energy, the horse's body was going to the hand. So the shoulder needs to be getting over the jump. The second approach, there was no way he was going to jump it because you didn't give yourself any time. You just kind of whipped around, had a trot, picked up canter, and went to the fence. And the reality is your job is to make sure every approach is an achievable success. So let's say the first time, I think he was slightly cheap and his energy had been degraded from a turn, which turns do that. And his energy had been degraded by the little bit of a coffin there, or the ditch there, which that would do that as well. So when he came out of where the ditch was, he's behind the leg, and when you go to turn, there's just no horse with you to make that turn. So you should have driven through the turn, chilled out for a stride or two, and then driven to the corner. Instead, when you came off the turn, you were almost pushing a rope, is how it looks when you come off that turn. And that just takes away your ability to get up to that fence. And so it's not bad, and then it just degrades right there. One other thing, solid top corners jump. They jump pretty well if you angle back at them a little bit. So I would have gone out one more stride. I always do that. I go out one more stride and make sure that I get square up to that. It's not square. I don't get square to the front of it. I actually try to jump back a little bit on an angle at the front of one, especially when the jumps are this size. And that does make a little bit of a risk of them seeing more of the flag. And so what I would describe it at is, in that size of corner, I would almost be square to that front of that jump because the width isn't that great. So you would have gone, for me, I would have had you go one more stride, probably one more stride before you turned. In the turn, I would have gotten a little bit more aggressive with my leg and probably been tapping with the whip, which is on the right side of his neck, which is where it should be for that corner. But when you're turning, a little bit like the last horse in the dressage, the inside rein started the turn, and so the horse falls a little bit to the outside. And then when you go, let's go forward, he's already gone. He's not even there. And so then he gets there. And like I said, it's like pushing a rope. And what you want to do is you want to have the rein where he pulls you along to it. And I say pull you, and I don't mean like he runs off with you, but he's just slack there. But you needed to go around that tree, take your time, have a plan the second time. Don't let one mistake become two mistakes. Because if he'd run out the third time, I would have said it was because he almost learned to run out. But here you've regrouped. You've gotten a little bit more, giving yourself time, which is fine. You already had the stop. So on this approach, he's a little bit shorter and punchier in the canter. And I guess that's the thing is I would have him short and punchy and then think 2 strides away, I'm going to move him forward to it without letting go of the mouth, but to ride him into that support. And it's a shame because legitimately, it just looked like you could have had one stop there. And the tap on the whip, the tap on the shoulder, I probably would have done that as I entered into the turn, not after. Because if you think about it, when you take your hand and do that with it, you're actually losing connection. It's a little bit like when I see people come into a fence or worried about, they take their hand off the rein and smack them with a whip. And I'm like, if the horse didn't want to jump it and you've taken your hand off the rein, they're going to run out. The whip is not an effective tool that way. But if you come over that ditch and you immediately land and sort of jazz him up into your connection so that when you leave the turn, he's ready to jump the fence. There's no distraction. And a lot of times on the way to the fence, when you do this with your whip, it takes away some of the focuses of what's in front of them. And they kind of are like, well, that's what? And you end up with actually ending up with that issue because of it, if that makes sense. But the biggest thing I would say is I would have probably, after he landed off the ditch, I will say that was a very tough question for the level. I would have landed off the ditch, and you've got to immediately put out of your mind what you've just done and now create the new horse so you need to jump the next fence. Rev them up before you're in the turn. Do all of your kind of, hey, now pay attention to me, so that when you come off the turn, it's just you and him focusing on the goal of across that ditch. So you got pitched a little bit as he did the run out, but I don't think that was the cause of the run out. A lot of people would be like, oh, well, you jumped ahead. But honestly, he was already gone from you at that point. But to me, it looked like you didn't leave the turn with the horse you needed to jump the fence with. So no matter how much you put your right leg on and your right rein on, it was sort of a bit hit or miss if he was gonna pop over and he was gonna jump it weak. My guess is he doesn't want to do that. So we need to have energy earlier to make the correction there. Is that I think that's pretty standard. If you're jumping those corners, jump at them more square. That would be always, if you ever walk a course with me, even at the big events, I'm always like, stay out and turn in, always be inclined to give them more time rather than less time. And then when you get on one that is really going well, you can cut the lines and so on, which like my little Twinkie horse, I will angle stuff with him all day long. He's really green to the sport, but he's really experienced in the jumping. So I take advantage of that and use it, because once you get them really broke, that's what you have to do. And yours is still, he jumped 3 fences there. What he needs to jump is one combination, and that's going to take some time, but it's fine. And I'm glad the steeplechase, got your gallop where it needed to be. And that is the point of it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, totally.
Unless you're trying to angle back at it. I see that. Yeah, but you can stay, so it doesn't mess up the striding. If you stay out 1 more whole stride, you could stay out 4 more whole strides and come way back on the angle. There's yes, if you say I need 5 strides, then yes, it would have messed up that number. But why does it have to be 5? It could have been 7. It could have been, I don't know, it could have been 8 if you'd gone way out to the right to turn back to it. But the job is to give the horse the time to jump it clean and not ride the number. So I'd be always inclined to think in my work, in my walking, I want to add the step. And then if it shows up where I leave it out, that's fine too,
Yeah, the hanging out, making the turn longer than it is was something I learned the hard way from having a run out of the corner.
Yeah, and everybody, I'll be honest with you, especially in this program, people come in and they'll come in at intermediate. I've got one right now that's planning on going intermediate in the spring, and it's like, you can't be that impulsive. You have to be okay with waiting to have the door open. And the higher the level you go, and I will say this in clinics and lessons all the time, the difference between 5-star and 4-star is the size of the jump is consistently bigger at 5. The questions come at you more rapidly at 5 because there's more of them. But one of the biggest difference at the actual combinations is the roping. The roping is right up against you, so you can't go out and give them more room. And that's why you don't want to be getting away with it at the 4-star and step up to the 5-star. But if you look at your course, you could have gone, landed off the ditch, hauled out to the right, gone way out, turned back. You could have put 12 strides in there. I'm not suggesting that was the right decision, but you don't feel committed to something if the course designer hasn't put it there and gotten in your way.
It's really interesting. It's also really interesting what you said about using the crop going up to the jump, because it does what you said makes sense. And I hadn't thought about it that way. So very helpful. Well, the next video, if we want to go, we're almost out of time. Do we want to go to a video of Kyle or?
Well, I think that it's, which one? Riley?
As well.
Yeah, it's Riley?
We threw in 2 videos here, and I threw mine in because I wanted you to see it. Throw up the one of mine. It's not good.
Is this?
Yeah.
Yes,
so this is the first jump on the course on Conroy. He's 4 years old. He's been doing and you can see, that was god awful. I was so unhappy with that. But where the problem is he came out of the box here and he was a little better than the last time I came to the jump at the last show. He's only done the 2 shows, but you'll see his rhythm's really good, but I never moved him up to it. And so then I had that horrible hop sensation. Now, I stay behind him at that point to help him get over it. It got way better after that, but I thought it'd be useful for you guys to see, that's me out of the box, a horse I absolutely think the world of. And that's a horse behind the leg. The last time he did that, he trotted out of the box. I hardly got to canter, and I panicked and hit the go button 3 strides away, and it worked out better, but it was a way worse approach. But I recognized how bad it was. On that one, he came out of the box. He was in that good rhythm, and I went to put the gas on, and nothing happened. And you're always better overriding. You can't fault on the side of aggression. And what I did there was I rode too passively and not actively enough to create the horse I needed to get a good jump at the first jump. So I got a jump, and that was it. But what happens from that is the next jump, I mean, I'm like, we are going to make this one better. And that's the goal, is you have to constantly be readapting. So if you pull the next one up, I wanted you to see it because it's bad. It's not good. And I think sometimes everybody thinks, oh, well, they just have, like, I had a great weekend last weekend. Oh, that's him later in the course. Sorry. But you can see he's just jumping them out of rhythm, and at the next combination, he does the same thing. So Jen sent one of Riley coming out of the box, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. So you might, I mean, we can watch this and you can pull up. But this is, I don't know, 8 fences later or something like that. I'm not a good counter, but like, you know, now his rhythm's good. And you can see, like, when I say, let's go forward, he goes on forward. I got a little bit stuck on the left rein here and had to kind of make a bit of a weight stride, and I lost the rhythm through the air. So I turned just a little bit too early there, but you can see the rhythm's not any different. So why are the jumps better? Because he's going to jump this one pretty well. Well, they're better because I've got him in front of the leg to be able to hold that rhythm. And remember, I'm trying to train him to be a top horse. So I'm willing to look at what we're, you know, doing right now and make those improvements. So this is Riley on a homebred of ours that I've done some novices on. And you can see she, you know, like the first jump, they don't always get down there strong, but you can see she pushed her up out of the box, which I didn't. And then she just took her and supported her a bit here. And then she moved up, and the reaction on the backside is the horse buggers off a little bit. That's a way better reaction than what I had. Okay. So you're kind of playing with this. What are we trying to do? Well, that weekend, that show's over. What we want to have is better horses for the next show. That's it. So by the end of next year, my horse is 5. I hope that he's going, I mean, he'll be going training, but I kind of hope he'll be going prelim by the end of next year, because if I can unlock all that stuff, he'll answer all the questions. But don't get, I wasn't like, there's, every one of them's that way. I rode another mare there in the novice that came in, had been having some issues, and it was like magic. It was the best ride of the day for me, but we had everything going in the right direction. So even though she'd come in with problems, she's a full sister to my Ready or Not mare, and she just felt like a glove. But I'd really attended to her problems, and because of that, she was really willing and open. And you can't get too bogged down on the day. You have to keep thinking, when they finish the course, were they better than when they started? And will that carry me to the next show? And I will say he was better starting this time than he was last time, but I wasn't as good as I should have been. And the next time out, I'll be more aware of that. And I'll probably actually, with him, gallop out of the box instead of starting from, I think I might have walked and trotted. And I don't usually gallop them out of the box, but he's just a little bit of a diesel engine. He's a little slower to get going at the moment. So I should have attended to that more in the preamble. So don't get bogged down to it, because a poor effort doesn't mean that you can't have great success in other later. And then once the horse is trained, I mean, God, it's so much fun. But don't be afraid of the training. Don't be thinking that it's because something didn't go right that the training isn't working. You just keep thinking about where you're going to be in next week, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and for me, 4 years. Every 4 years, there's a major games. I want to have my horses aiming for that if I can keep them that long, basically. What is it? Lesson. How do you tell if the horse is in front of the leg? Well, on that, yeah, this is so funny. We were just talking about this because we're stupid and we talk horses all the time. I don't remember who was writing. Oh, it was Kira Kirkland wrote this. It was a blip out of an article she wrote, and she was talking about in front of the leg, and she was like, you know, people ask what the description of, like, what in front of the leg is. What's that feeling like? And she's like, it's like trying to describe the taste of strawberry jam to someone that's never had strawberry jam, or like, Yeah, there was another, but you could say, like, how do you describe wind in your hair if to someone who's never had wind in their hair? It's almost an impossible description. But when they're in front of the leg, there's this mass of energy, and not electricity, but just this feeling of energy that is flowing forward to the hand, and it's being received by the hand and the bit. And then when the hand and seat and leg all say, let's go that direction, whether it's to the left, to the right, a leg yield or whatever, all that energy, that ball I was describing earlier in that first horse, that energy ball that we we're trying to move back more under the rider, that energy ball, because you'll be sitting right over top of it, it's almost like you're sitting on a Pilates ball and you want it to roll that way, and all you do is kind of move your hip and the ball rolls that way, rather than you're on a couch and you do that and nothing moves. And so that's the energy of in front of the leg. So when you bring your seat down and you put your leg on, the horse should just respond. And that horse that I rode there, you see very clearly, he's got a beautiful canter down there in a nice rhythm. When I put my leg on, because I promise you I put my leg on, nothing happened. That horse was not in front of my leg. So how did I know he wasn't in front of my leg? Because nothing happened when I asked him to go forward. On the other end of it, in front of the leg, when I go to collect him, I should feel the energy come up underneath me. And that allows me to make an ad or do a canter pirouette or whatever. But it feels a hard thing to describe. And it's the thing that once you sort of get that, and you get that feeling that you love on a horse, that like the amount of pressure in your hand that you want for your horse, the amount of pressure from the leg that you want in your horse, and you're always training towards it. Once you get it, you're going to want it on every single horse. Like you'll constantly be searching for it. And that's honestly, a little bit the downside here is I'll ride horses. And like I said it last week, and someone was like, oh, so I think Jen actually asked me which my favorite horse was. And I rode a great intermediate horse that I think is one of the best horses I've ever had come in the barn. I rode Conroy, who I actually think is the most talented horse I've ever had in the barn. Ready or Not Sister was the best ride I had all day. And I had a fantastic training horse jump around there as well. But that Ready or Not horse, it went the way I want her to feel. That's work that has achieved that. And that's what I'm looking on for all of them. So I might have had my intermediate horse was clear. He was pretty quick. He jumped well, but it didn't feel quite the way I want it to feel yet. So I'm, I think Riley asked me when I got back to the trailer, she was like, are you happy? I was like, well, I'm satisfied, but it takes a lot to get me happy because I want that feeling. I had it at Maryland on Gus. I was like, I came off cross country and I wasn't in full control, but I was like, I felt like a kid again. And it was just awesome. But that happens like 1 out of 8-10 rides. But when it starts to happen regularly, now you have your horse. And then you just hope, like for me, the hard part is I usually get that. Like I get that on Ready or Not. And now she's being sold. And those things are hard because as a professional, you get it. And then it's like, oh, now it leaves. And I have to start trying to fix another horse and train it to do it. So I just hope you recognize a couple of things with that. My feeling is different than the feeling you're going to look for, than the feeling that you're going to do and what you're looking for. So I would be super, I would just think of it that way. Is access to the horse. It's making your partner more your partner is in front of the leg, because whenever you think it, the horse is inclined to do it then.
Amazing. Well, I think we should end all video reviews with us reviewing a video of Kyle, just so we get everyone feels like we're even playing field. That was such a great learning experience. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. And for anyone who's going to be at the USEA convention this weekend, we're going to be there. So stop by the Ride IQ table, say hi. Thank you for everyone who submitted videos. It is such a fun experience for all of us to learn from you and alongside you. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Jen and Kyle, we'll see you tomorrow. But appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Thank you guys very much.
Hope we see you at the convention. Pat your horse.